Well, the country created a lot of millionaires in the second half of the 90s, really, large numbers of millionaires at the 39% top tax rate. They still made it. They still became millionaires. If we went back to 39%, would that be class warfare?
Well, I think that when you increase taxes, you hurt the economy. I mean, history has shown that time and again. So you can't escape those lessons. I think the best thing that we can do right now, and the class warfare, the government spending has not helped anyone, and it certainly hasn't helped lower income people in this country, especially Latinos, which the unemployment rate has been hovering 1 to 2 points higher for the Hispanic population than it has for the rest of the population under President Obama. So clearly the path that we're on is not sustainable.
Joanna?
Ray, history has shown us trickle-down economics has never worked. When you have a budget where corporations, millionaires, and billionaires are getting $4 trillion over 10 years in tax breaks at the expense of low-income kids and their families, at the expense of health, nutrition, education programs, I just don't think that the impact of that is just not deniable. You mentioned a short-term solution. We hope that this conversation focus on the long term in terms of outputs and investments in our kids, who are our future professionals, our future innovators, and our future workforce.
Well, if we could get together the coalition of American millionaires, and you had to make the case, because you heard Mario, he said, don't take away from these people to give to these people. Can you make the case to them that if we raised the top tax rate from 35 to 39%, where it was during the Clinton administration, they'd be better off? Or should they do it because they feel some obligation or some desire to help people at the other end of the scale? What's the reason, the cornerstone reason, that you could give to high earners to go back to the old tax rate?
The reason I would give would be our future workforce. When you have 1 in 3 kids not reading at grade level in the 4th grade, who will be our workforce? Who will be the future in terms of supporting all of us who are working now? Certainly investment in those kids is critical in terms of making sure that we as a nation can compete globally. And at any point when there are drastic cuts made to education, to Pell Grant scholarship programs, and financial assistance, on top of the fact that most universities and colleges, the tuition has increased upwards of 35% and 40%, we are rapidly becoming a nation where opportunity is in question in terms of opportunity for whom. And I would think that for those folks, and millionaires, billionaires, and corporations, that would be, in terms of the future workforce, our future competitiveness and our future economic growth is built on the workforce of our kids, our workforce being our kids.
Rich, the Obama plan still doesn't have a lot of meat on the bones, but the House has passed the Ryan plan, and that has a lot of specifics. When you look at that idea of how to get us on the road back toward paying our bills, toward collecting what we spend and not spending much more than we collect, what do you see?
Well, again, if you focus, and I don't want to criticize one party over the other, because at the end of the day, we're going to need to come to compromise here, and we've got, each party has its sacred cows. And for the Republican Party and the riot budget, the defense budget, and not raising revenues is sacred. And so we are heavily reliant in that budget on cutting discretionary programs, which disproportionately impacts the poor, and Medicare and Medicaid. Democrats are going to be much more concerned about mandatory spending with Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, and trying to take care of those. So at the end of the day, the answer here is actually, I would use a slightly different term, Ray, than you used up front. I would say, as President Kennedy used to say, shared sacrifice has got to be the answer. Everything has to be on the table, and we have to take a good hard look at savings we can achieve from all of the programs on the table. Domestic discretionary spending is only 15% of the budget. You could eliminate the entire domestic discretionary budget and not eliminate the deficit. So we're not going to cut our way out of this with domestic discretionary spending. We're going to have to put revenues on the table. We're going to have to look hard at the domestic discretionary budget, and I think the president is going to do that in terms of what the key investments are for the future in education, in the environment, in the social safety net. And then we're going to have to really scrub Medicare and Medicaid and see where we can come up with some savings. But to say that people making over $250,000, or pick your number, whatever it is, who have gotten a lot and benefited a lot over the last 10 years since the Bush tax cuts, can't help at this point is ridiculous. Furthermore, and frankly more importantly, the Bush tax cuts have produced nothing in terms of economic growth over the last decade. It's not like those tax cuts have spurred on a burgeoning economy. And I'm not just talking about since the Great Recession. From 2001 to 2007, before the Great Recession, we weren't seeing anything in the way of job creation or economic growth.